see Michael. Yummy, I saw earlier. I talked with earlier. I don't know if she's on there now. Ron is on there and Michelle is on there. I'm doing the
I'm
roll call.
here.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
I'm
you.
here. It's switching to my daughter's name. I have to, I
Okay.
don't know why, Danielle.
Good morning.
But,
Good morning, Danny. Good morning, Yummy. So anyway, I think all that we're missing is Laney, and I talked with him a little bit earlier, and he may be joining us.
Brent,
So,
he just joined.
He just joined. Okay,
Yes.
so actually everybody's here. We have a full committee. That's good because we have an important conversation really around Lee Summit. There's an agenda in front of you. If somebody wants to make a motion to approve the agenda, that would be in order.
I move to approve the agenda, Michael.
I second this, Joycelyn.
Is there a second? Okay. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
All right. We have approved agenda. We have some minutes from the prior meeting. They are in board docs, or they're in front of you. Appreciate staff taking them. Is there any correction that anybody needs to make or wants to make? Somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, this Joycelyn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We're now down to the main item of business. I want to note that we have lots of staff on the call with us, and also Jim Stuffelbeam, our architect, and Jim Coulter with J.E. Dunn. So if we have questions really around the project, they're here as a resource to us. And I'm just going to turn this over to Steve Potter.
Thank you, Brent. And as we alluded to Tuesday night, we did have the GMP, the guaranteed maximum price for Lee Summit that had come in, and we were still working on the details of this, still making sure everything was included and going over it with a fine-tooth comb. So we didn't want to talk about it at the board meeting, and we also wanted to follow our process to bring this through the building committee first before. But we were able to, and by we, I mean Jake, staff, our consultants, the OAC, as it's called, the owners, operators, and architects, construction. We were able to look through it, made sure it was complete, and it came in, the final guaranteed maximum price came in at $4,978,490. Now, in terms of that number, what does that number mean? Well, that number is higher than target. If you look on your placemat or your dashboard, if you happen to have that handy, you'll see that the actual GMP, the target number for this was $3.8 million. And as I said, it came in at 4.9, which is, in round numbers, about $1.1 million higher than target. There are some reasons that it's higher, and those of you who have been listening, I've been suggesting that it's going to come in higher, but there are some pretty good reasons why it came in higher, and mostly it's because of a change in scope compared to what was originally anticipated. So first of all, the first thing to discuss about this is that the preliminary plan that we used for the target numbers was based on expanding the building toward the parking lot. And that was the principle, that was the idea. The preliminary plans were never meant to be a shovel-ready plan. That they didn't go into that level of detail. We just kind of looked at it from a high level, get budgeting numbers, and then we continued to go in. Once the plan became more actionable, and once we really started focusing on it, we realized that the scope did need to be increased in order to do everything that we needed to do, and the fact that we couldn't just expand out the front of the building the way we thought we could. If we did that, it would actually exacerbate the second issue that I'm going to talk about now, and this is the second reason that it increased in cost, and it was because between that preliminary analysis, which was in 2014, and where we are right now, there have been many updates to codes, especially in ADA compliance. And these changes require more resources. So for us to build this, current code, it's going to cost us some more money. Perhaps the greatest area involves the parking lot itself. I'd already alluded to the parking lot, but the parking lot itself has a lot of problems. What we need to do is we need to redesign and flatten the parking lot, which will help with overall safety. It'll better address stormwater issues. I was out there not too long ago during a rain, and it doesn't need to be a heavy rain to turn that parking lot into a very broad, flat river. It's just really, really steep, and it needs to be leveled in order to, and also needs to be leveled in terms of safety, so that when people get out with wheelchairs or get out with strollers, that they don't roll away from the cars. It happens and happens frequently. It's just that the parking lot is not at the right grade. And so redesigning and flattening the parking lot will help the overall safety, better improve stormwater issues, and decrease the overall grade, making the parking lot adhere to ADA standards. That's needed, but it does cost money to do that. So we were talking about this. Staff talked with the OAC, the architects and the construction company, about the needs to increase scope to meet the new standards. The initial estimate they came back to us with was close to $6 million. And we said, there's no way. It's got to get closer to target. And so our construction manager at risk model that we have really did allow us to have a lot of creative solutions that drove the ultimate GMP closer to our target amount. The way that I like to look at this is that we are providing close to $6 million in value, but it's only costing us $4.9 million, which is a good deal. And of course, as we are doing this is a type 3 construction, which basically means that we are gutting the entire building. And when everything's all said and done, it's essentially going to be a brand new building, which means we're going to be getting a brand new 20,000 square foot, actually 22,000 square foot building for $4.9 million, which is way below market. You cannot buy a brand new building in today's market for $4 or $5 million. So I'm going at great labors to try to explain to you why it's over and why we think it's appropriate that it's over. But the question ultimately has to be, so how are we going to pay for it? If it is over and if staff's going to recommend that we accept this, which staff will recommend that we accept the GMP. So there are in my notes, I wrote an easy way. Nothing's ever easy, but there's a clear way to make up the difference between the GMP and the target number. So the first thing that I want to point out is that, again, this is because of our model, construction manager at risk. The way this works is that we agree to a guaranteed maximum price with J.E. Dunn. They say they will bring us the building at this price. If it costs more than this amount, J.E. Dunn has to figure out how to make it work. If it costs less than that amount, we get the money back in terms of a credit. And so, that's the basics of the CMR, construction manager at risk. Now, the reason that I'm bringing that up right now is that we have every indication from J.E. Dunn that we're going to be getting about $300,000 back from Colburn Road. There's going to be a credit that's going to go into our contingency fund of an additional $300,000. This will make our contingency, if you look at the placemat, the contingency is $2.1 million. It'll make it $2.4 million. And so if you use the contingency to make up the difference, that'll leave $1.3 million in the fund. And there will also be some nominal amounts returned as work package 11 is completed. So the additional funds in the property acquisition, and there's also some additional funds in the property acquisition budget. For example, we originally had budgeted $700,000 to buy new property for North Oak. It's looking like we're not going to use that for North Oak, but we'll be able to use that $750,000 into the contingency fund to help with any sort of escalation or price overruns that might occur since we're changing course for North Oak. The point being is that I feel like our contingency fund, even if we use $1.1 million essentially to balance the difference between the target amount and the guaranteed maximum price, We're still going to have a contingency of about $1.3 million, probably more than that, for our final projects that we still have on the table. Green Valley, North Oak, East Independence, and then the maintenance projects at Riverside, Harvey Jones, and Smithville. So with that said, staff does recommend accepting the GMP, guaranteed maximum price, of $4,978,490, and to use $1.1 million from the contingency fund to make up the difference. That concludes staff report.
Does somebody want to make a motion and then get a second, then we can discuss it?
John, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second this Joycelyn.
Okay. All right. So the matter is in front of us. And so it's just open conversation here. Comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah. Yeah, the maker has a comment or thought concerning the contingency. It seems like we're relying on the contingency for a lot of things which aren't yet resolved. And I'm thinking specifically of Riverside, and I certainly don't want to talk any details there, but we have to have some room for adjustments in projects not yet completed. And we are pretty sure that we're probably going to have some adjustment in the amount for Riverside. So how do we, the contingency is not endless. What I'm saying is, how do we account for those things? The East Independence, for example, is another one which may or may not require some additional contingency reliance. So that's my comment, I guess, or a question. I'm not sure which one it is, but I'm just a little concerned about how far the contingency will stretch.
This is Michelle. I'd like to piggyback off of what John's saying, because I've got to be honest, every time we have this conversation, I get a pit in my stomach, because it seems like when now we're nearing the end, we know we have big projects, and I'm still not there with Riverside. So I don't know. I absolutely agree with what John's saying.
Yeah, this is Michael, and I would like to add my comments to what John said, and I have the same concerns. If we keep tapping into that contingency, I know it's there for a reason, but yeah, how do we justify that with stuff coming up, and how do we address the possibilities of having to tap into that even further down the road? So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Other comments, thoughts?
This is
Brent, I
Joycelyn.
can share a little more. Oh, go ahead, Joycelyn. I can share a little more when you all have voiced your thoughts and concerns.
No, go ahead, Steve, because mine is on a little different angle. So
Okay. Well, I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that we definitely do not want to do is to be in a situation where we cannot fulfill the project scope that we talked about on day one and even before day one in 2015 and 2016. And so it is important that we not get at the end of this and say, well, whoops, we can't do this project. And the contingency is helping us, ensure that we can make up those differences. A couple things to keep in mind. One is that new construction has almost always been more predictable than renovated construction in terms of the projects, and not only more predictable, but also we've beat the market a couple of times on our new construction, and so are come in lower than target. And so with the projects that are remaining, they're new construction projects. And so that's one thing that's making me feel a little bit more comfortable about tapping the contingency, as opposed to the renovation projects, which Lee Summit is actually, I believe it's the last of, it's the last of the renovation projects, unless we renovate Riverside. And so that's one issue. The other issue is that I've had several conversations with Jim Coulter about this notion, mostly around escalation and about inflation regarding construction raw materials, steel, wood, things like that. The feeling that we're having, that he has left me with, is that our contingency should help with all of those sorts of issues. A $1 million contingency should help with all of those issues with our remaining projects that we have left in the hopper. Frankly, if we were, I feel like if we were in a dangerous place with the contingency on this, then we wouldn't be recommending it. Our staff would have continued to work with the architects and construction manager to drive the price even further down. I understand the concerns. I share the concerns. We are watching this very closely. But the other thing to keep in mind about the CMR, the model that we have, is that this is different than the design bid build model that you're used to seeing, where you design it, and then someone bids on it, and then you get out in the field and they go, whoops, we missed all this, we need an extra $50,000. That's not the way that our model works. Once we agree to this is the price. And that has been the experience all the way through this process. There's more surety, I guess, is what I'm saying to this, that keeping a bunch of money keeping a large reserve in the contingency is not as, it's necessary, but not as necessary as you would find in a traditional model.
Steve, I guess one of my bigger concerns is, you see it everywhere. I get what we're doing, but you have to be living under a rock not to see what's going on with construction prices. They're not going to sit there and eat that for us. Obviously, we're paying for it. That's why these prices are going up. The market's going to reflect it, but I don't know. I just think, I just think we need to be a little bit more careful with the taxpayer dollars right now.
Yeah, I would like to comment too. I was just thinking the same thing Michelle just talked about, just in talking with people that I know that are in the construction business here around Platte City, and just seeing the prices that homes are selling for and new construction. The costs of materials are jumping up astronomically. So in regards to this 4.9 million, and then future projects that we've got on the board, that is certainly going to weigh heavily, in my estimation, on these other future projects, just the cost of materials and all that kind of stuff. So.
And I agree with that. Obviously, it's one of the reasons why we're handling this the way that we are, with potentially a recommendation of the GMP and then doing a poll of the board and really shortening the time period. I think Jim Coulter's on the call. I think he could verify this. If we would have done our normal GMP process, which means have our meeting today, and then everybody sort of make sure that everything's right, and then wait till May to approve this, it wouldn't have come in at $4.9 million. It probably would have come in at $5.2 million or something in that ballpark, for exactly the reasons that everybody's talking about right now, because they don't know what the price of steel is going to be in 3.5 weeks. But they do know what the price of steel is going to be in 72 hours, and they can put in that order. They can lock in the price today and get that price so that it's much more certain. And this is part of the delivery model that's working to our advantage. We don't need a truckload of structural steel tomorrow to build a building. We're talking about a truckload of structural steel to help build a building down the road. They can put the order in now. A lot of what's driving the volatility, at least in my read of this, is the fact that there's pent up demand for everybody who was sitting on their hands on the last 12 months, and they're wanting to build today. That's not what we're doing. Because we're scheduling stuff and we're putting things in a hopper, we can lock in the price today, and that's going to be the price. And again, Jim's on the call. We've agreed to a GMP for Green Hills, as I recall, and this is a really good example. We agreed to this months ago, before there were steel shortages, and the price is the price. So, Jim Coulter, if you are on the call, I wouldn't mind you weighing in.
Sure. I mean, I think the team has done a lot of open and transparent conversations around this. I shared a quarterly cost index with the team on Monday, I think it was, and we saw an increase for the first quarter this year of a little over 4%, and we didn't even see that much over the whole span of 2020. So as we approached this, we worked together and said, hey, if we can find a way to quickly lock in the pricing, because some pricing is only being held for a week. We were able to confirm that and actually get the prices locked in if we can move forward with this and get the materials on time when we need them. So we're actively always looking at the market. And as Steve said, Green Hills, because we got that under a GMP, we locked in the steel, got it ordered. If we had a permit, we'd be seeing steel in the air right now. But the team has been really good about working with each other and trying to find a way to hit these GMPs the way we are. I was actually nervous about this one because of all that material volatility, and it came in slightly under where we thought it was. And I don't know if I can explain all those reasons. It might be that we're on building number 27 and the market really understands the program, understands us, understands Mid-Continent, understands the design team. We have been getting really good feedback.
Joycelyn, you were going to speak earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull back from the dollars and cents piece of it. While it is important for us to watch the bottom dollar, I think that's extremely important. I think staff has been very, very good at balancing surprises or changes in scope with offsetting costs on the other end. I don't believe at all that this is and I don't think anyone's suggesting this, but I don't believe at all the staff is double dipping into the contingency. I think the placement that we have is a good way of us making sure that we're not spending the contingency twice, because that would be really not a good idea. That would be disastrous. I want us to keep in mind that the projects coming up in the future are projects that may be able to be delayed or changed or whatever. This project, I don't believe, is one that can be delayed. This is our busiest branch. And I think it will continue to be the busiest branch. And it was presented at the Lee Summit City Council. Our plans were submitted last night. I haven't had a chance to watch that meeting. People are waiting for this branch. And I think that we have no assurances that the prices of steel are going to drop in the next few months. I think that with the change in scope, we were able to save some money by and get the land that we needed at no cost. I think that what we're talking about right now is direct service to our patrons. This is our busiest branch. They don't have meeting rooms. They don't have a auditorium or an area for programming that's enclosed. I think that for our busiest branch, I think the need to provide the services should weigh on our decision about whether or not to wait on doing it or waiting in hopes of the prices are still coming down, because from what I'm hearing, I don't think that that's a given. What we need to decide, I think, in addition to watching the money, is are we getting a good value for the building and the needs of the community? And I think that staff has demonstrated that. I'm a little partial to Lee Summit, but I think this is one of the buildings that really, really needs to be addressed for a variety of reasons. And there's a lot of things that can't be changed in the scope because of ADA, parking lot safety. It's just, it will continue to be a busy branch, and it needs to be done right. So that's all I have to say. And to keep in mind, the price we're talking about is the ceiling. It's, if we vote on this, this is the ceiling. If J.E. Dunn and staff can find savings along the way, it'll be to the benefit, but this is the ceiling price. So that's all I have, Brent.
Thank you. Let me offer a few comments. This is Brent Schondelmeyer. I looked at our building assessment, and actually this branch had a C- score. It's really one of the sort of lowest scores. And I think Joycelyn made a sound, articulate case. Really, I think our consideration of this is somewhat over-influenced by Riverside. How do we fund the additional money for Riverside? If we went back to our original plan, it was 660 or 7,000. If we knew that that was the case, frankly, that was one of the considerations early on when we started the building program. If Riverside had this desire or hope, we would entertain it, but we really needed to drop it down to the bottom of the building program to see that if we were able to get through everything else and fund everything else. The other branch that's on the program it's a new service location is East Independence. It's a community I live in. There's this 20-year view that somehow there's going to be a population growth in a valley that really hasn't sort of occurred. So when we made our building program, we didn't sort of say we're going to do this building program, but we're going to do it in 4 years. To me, if we'd set that at the outset, I would have found that stunning. But we've been able to proceed on an expeditious fashion. Given our talented team, given our willingness to secure bonds to kind of proceed with the building program. So we can get down and not build East Independence for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years at another point, and we will have a better sense of what our resources are. I want to share this, but Michelle has been very, very important to kind of give us the discipline adhering to the placemat. Let's try to do everything it is that we can, within the funds that are available. And that's been a very, very helpful tool throughout this. But we transferred, I think it was $4 million from the operating budget to the capital budget by a board action on Tuesday night. So we have resources to fund our building program over a period of time. I'm come down with Joycelyn. I don't want us to sort of say, well, here's where we start. This is a generational investment in one of our top usage libraries, and other libraries that follow behind this, in some senses, may not have the benefit of, be disadvantaged by being at the last of the list, but in some senses, we put them at the last of the list for what I want to suggest were thoughtful and strategic reasons. So I'm hoping that we can be supportive as a building committee of this sort of proposal. Understand each one of them is going to have the same sort of conversation as we get down to the end of our program and as we start getting down to the end of our budgeted resources.
Yeah, and I'll just as John, I'll just have to say, Joycelyn, thank you. You played your normal role of reminding us that it's more than dollars and cents that we're dealing with here. It is trying to give service this promise to patrons. And I think we all know that the present library in Lee Summit is abysmal, is the only way I could put it. It's unseen, it's difficult to use, and yet it's the highest circulation library. I think that's still true, is it not, Steve?
That is correct.
It's the highest circulation library in our complex of libraries, and so we do have to consider that. And I just thank her for reminding me about that about that issue. That doesn't solve the problem, but I do think that they presented an excellent case for proceeding with this. It's the best we're going to get for a library that's badly needed for upgrading.
Oh, Yummy or Ron, comments, questions?
I just had a question. I almost hesitate asking this, but I'm just to follow through the numbers. The bid's coming in at $5 million. We've already allocated, we have money in the bank of 3.9 million. So we've got 1.1 million spread. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. We have $300,000. We have savings from Corbin Road land. So now we're down to 800,000. And we're saving money from not having to have a land acquisition for North. So that $800,000 is going down more. So I'm just wondering about the magnitude of the dollars that we have to possibly tap into the contingency fund, as well as the fact that, as Brent mentioned 2 nights ago, we had a couple of million made available. So I just, again, I want to know I'd appreciate knowing how much really is not accounted for in the 5 to 3.9. Then take away the other savings that we've recognized or realized, and then how much really are we looking for? I rambled a lot. I apologize.
Well, just John again. It's a hard decision to make. It really is, because we know that we're still facing some decisions on 2 libraries that were mentioned, and I may be missing some things too. I'm also remembering that we had some sales, and I don't know the dollars from the sales. Steve, you might help me to remember that. I remember the $750,000 for Liberty, which came into, and was that put into the contingency, or how was that absorbed by the
not
fund?
in the contingency, but in the capital projects fund. So the $4 million that was transferred Tuesday night went into the general capital projects fund. About 3 million of that satisfied the remaining funding of the 100. So if you look at the placemat where it says total, right underneath, J.E. Dunn, 125 of 18, all the way down at the bottom, all the way at the bottom of that column, it says $113 million. That $113 million was fully funded by 3 of the $4 million that was transferred Tuesday night. The remaining 1 million was put in the capital projects fund, along with the $750,000 that John's talking about for the sale of the Liberty branch, for building maintenance and to start getting us on top of things. Or if you want to look at it another way, theoretically, that could be added to the contingency. It would increase the budget. I'd recommend that we not do that. I'd recommend that we stay on this budget until we can't stay on this budget. But yeah, there's just off the top of my head immediately, there's $1.75 million setting unaccounted for in the capital projects fund, that the goal is to use that fund, that money potentially in 4 or 5 years, to start fixing parking lots and things like that. But theoretically, that is additional funding that is setting in there that's unaccounted for. The actual delta that Ron's talking about, yeah, is about $800,000 ballpark, between the amount that's coming in from Colburn Road and what we're actually tapping the contingency for. It's about $800,000.
So this is Brent. I have a question for Mr. Stufflebeam and the other Jim Coulter. Is there a sense on North Oak whether we will come in with our placemat figure, because we've not had a change of scope there? What's happened on Lee Summit is we had a change of scope warranted by other considerations when we got into it. To ask the question cleaner, can we anticipate North Oak coming in at a higher amount, similar to what our experience here is with Lee Summit.
And this is
I
Jim
get it.
Coulter. We just got the BD documents the other day, and we're getting ready to do another estimate. So that is usually when we kind of hit our peak. So I would think that we would know something in a couple weeks. There was, I think in our conceptual estimate, we were close to the number that made it work. So that made me feel okay. I wasn't seeing any big disparity there.
Thank you, Jim. I realize that's a challenging and risky question, but you know, I guess the question is, if every project passes, is it going to come over what our place mount would be? That would be some cause of concern. We know Riverside, as being presented to us, comes in over, but if we went to our original program, the number would be significantly less. So
Correct.
This
Yeah,
is Michelle
I,
again.
I don't want. Yeah, Michelle.
Whenever you finish, Steve, or whoever was
No,
talking first.
it was me, Michelle, and no, go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, I mean, I guess I get it. I mean, this branch needs to happen. It's a better price than what it's going to be later. I understand all that. I guess really to just save time and beating around the bush, I'm just going to have to dig in my heels more on. I'm not going to be able to support spending what the projections are for Riverside. I just can't. So I'm just going to say that I'll support this one, but I can't do it the way that the other one is. It like that gives me anxiety at night. I can't do it. So that's where I'm at. This branch needs to happen. We need to get it done for that community. I get all of that. We need to get the price. As long as we're not going to get hurt, fine. But the other part, I just don't think I can. Not until I see different things. I can't do it because that one's really bothering me a lot. So that's what I got.
All right. I'm going to ask for any additional comments or questions, and then I'm just going to call for a vote.
I have maybe one additional question or comment. This is Michael. So once Colburn Road opens back up, what impact is that going to have on, Lee's Summit? I realize I appreciate, Joycelyn, your comments, and just since this is the busiest branch, I'm not disagreeing with that or with the renovation of it, because I was just out there with Steve. But when Colburn Road, this 35,000 square feet, unbelievable building, it's going to be opening up here pretty quick. And so does that take some of the pressure off of the Lee Summit branch? It's not that far away. So I'm just asking the question.
I can address some of that. Lee Summit has just invested a lot of money in multifamily homes and buildings and apartments, and they are filling up very quickly. Lee Summit is growing exponentially. There's a lot of investments in real estate and commercial property. Lee Summit is growing. It's been growing since I first moved out here in the late 80s. It's not the same city as it was back then. It's gotten to the point where you don't really have to leave Lee Summit to get whatever you need, because there's just so much here. So to answer your question, Michael, I think the number one spot may change between the branches, but I think these three branches will always be probably in the top 10 of our branches. If you look at the last I looked at our circulation, and this was pre-pandemic, 1 in 10 of all our circulations came out of two branches, Colburn Road and Lee Summit branch. Out of our 31 branches, 1 in 10 transactions came out of those two branches. And knowing this population, I don't see that changing. This Lee Summit is heavy users of the libraries. And I with the new buildings, I actually see that increasing. Coburn Road, I think, will tap into all the small business owners. There's a big investment in small businesses, particularly around the downtown Lee Summit area. And I think that you'll see a new growth in Lee Summit, not a dilution of services between the three branches. But that's just the feeling I have based on talking to people out here.
And this is Steve. Joycelyn's assessment is true. That's what happened when we just had Lee Summit and we added Colburn Road. Within about 18 months, 2 years, Lee Summit had completely recovered all of the circulation that Colburn Road took off of it. And then Colburn Road started growing. And Joycelyn's numbers are correct about pre-pandemic and before the construction project. A little bit, it's actually a little more than 1 in 10 circulations occurred between those two buildings. Given everything we know, plus the opening of new LDS land for development, which previously was not open for development in Lee Summit, there is every indication to believe that that not only will Lee Summit and Colburn Road eventually snap back to their circulation levels, but East Lee Summit will only probably marginally take the load off of those two for a short amount of time. Once we as a culture and a community get back to full strength and Lee Summit's back at full strength, it may not be this building committee and it may not be this library director, but somebody is going to be discussing adding another 5,000 square feet to East Lee Summit because everything's going to be too busy in Lee Summit again. It's just the way that community has been growing for the last 40 years, and there's no end in sight.
Yeah, just John. Yeah, I just want to pile onto that just a little bit. The news within the last year at Lee Summit is that the Mormon Church land that is owned by Lee Summit, they have worked out an arrangement with the city now where they're going to move forward on that. And I have heard nothing to the contrary of that. And if that's the case, then over the next 15 years of developing that property, we're going to have another 15,000 homes in Lee Summit over the next 15 years. Now, that seems impossible and incredible, but the city's convinced that that's going to happen, and I think the property owners are convinced that it's going to happen also. That also brings into the picture the East Independence one. I'm pretty convinced that over time we're not going to spend as much money as we thought we were on the East Independence branch, just because of the way things are developing on the field of developing major pieces of property. It's less likely that those major pieces of property are going to develop in East Independence, and more likely that the emphasis is going to be on the Lee Summit development of those properties that are owned by the same church. And so I think that, in East, I think what I'm saying is I don't completely agree with Michelle about the Riverside thing, because I hope that we can hold open some possibility of continued negotiations with them that would produce expenses that would be somewhat higher than what we had originally allocated, because I think that there's going to be a much lower emphasis on the East Independence branch overall. So when you put that in the mix overall, it looks like that this is a worthy project and that we ought to go forward and approve it. Again, rambling. It's not something that you can easily discuss, this whole program, because we want to do the right thing by the money that was voted, and we want to try to do all the projects within that. And I guess what I'm saying is I think we will be able to do that even with this approval, without a concern. And I still think that we can save room for negotiations with Riverside.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Brent, I'm sorry. I do have one more piece of information that just
Okay.
came in. People were doing some calculations, and I want to make sure people understand this. Is that typically speaking, if we're dealing with an owner's contingency amount on a project our size with the amount of work left to go, it would typically be about 5% of the 113 million. And so looking at what that amount is, and I don't know the hard number because I wasn't supplied with the hard number, but the $2.1 million, or I'm sorry, the 1 million plus that I mentioned would still be remaining in contingency is well ahead of the industry standard of 5% in contingency for a project of this size at this point in time.
Okay. Very thoughtful conversation. Go ahead, Ron.
Brent? Yeah,
Go ahead.
I guess I had some thoughts that are maybe somewhat parallel to what Michelle said. I'm picking up a lot of populations and numbers and directions towards matching library capacity with those numbers. But then it's been my experience, again, admittedly not very deep because I live up north, is that the area that's being developed is, I won't say affluent, but certainly very comfortable. And I guess my thoughts are leaning strongly towards the concentration of library resources towards the areas where there is, I hate using the words that my grandkids use, but for the disadvantaged and marginalized. And it's been my observation that the area you're talking about is certainly not that, as opposed to a couple of branches, for example, right here on Highway 24. So, a grand edifice, of course, is it's great to have, but I guess my concern would be how in the big picture it's allocated with regard to specifically, for example, money going to I guess what I call a well-to-do geographic area, as opposed to someone that's on the other side, maybe like a Riverside or a Camden Point or something like that. Again, this is very, very non-quantifiable, but those are strong feelings I have. And I think maybe somewhat parallel to what Michelle was saying.
If I may.
Again, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. I lean to the right politically, but I despised giving tax breaks to Bezos and the big corporations. Okay, they already have what they have. Why should everybody else pay for that which has greater appreciation, maybe appreciation and efficacy elsewhere?
The chair is going to remind everybody the question in front of us today is lease summit and work package number 15. We may get down to a different conversation and a different vote and a very complex discussion really around Riverside. I think some of that is being influenced in our conversation today, and it's a thoughtful sort of approach because how do we handle everything? You just can't sort of say the individual decisions that we have made so far have cumulative effects. And so we're getting down to the end of the project list. So anyway, but I do.
If I may respond really quickly to Ron's question about Lee Summit and affluence. Lee Summit has a lot of affluent families, but there's a lot of families in poverty that are hidden behind pretty outsides. There's a lot of schools here that are high in free and reduced lunch. There's a lot of individuals here who are living paycheck to paycheck. It's not, Lee Summit is not Overland Park, but there is a wide disparity here, and there's a great need for library services here in Lee Summit. Even though it may look pretty, we have a great need here. Lee Summit also serves parts of South Kansas City, and parts of Grandview as well. The Lee Summit branch reaches areas exactly what Ron is talking about. So I wouldn't put the Lee Summit branch in with affluent branches necessarily. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, I'm going to go back. Any other questions, any other comments, any other additional information that somebody wants to bring to bear? Then I'm going to ask Teresa to do let me just do this myself. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, thank you. Teresa can call you tomorrow and ask you whether you will support this. You know, if you want her to call you, that's great. I hope if you were a yay today, that you would be a yay tomorrow when she calls you, because we need to get this. We want to get this in front of the full board. So anyway, thank you. I've always found our conversations robust and thoughtful and informative, and I'm grateful for that.
And
Let's
Brent,
go to
if
the
I
next
could,
item of business.
if staff could echo that, absolutely. I mean, everything that you all do helps me to inform, to better serve and to better do, and to better represent the position of the library when I'm working with Jim Coulter and Jim Stufflebeam and folks like that. So conversations like these are very helpful to me in knowing how to perform my job. So thank you so much. So next step, I just want to make sure this is clear for everyone. Next step, I'm going to put together a little memo. Actually, I'll probably put together a memo based very much on the report that I had at the outset of this. And then Teresa will poll the entire board before the end of the week. And then what we will do is assuming we get a majority vote on the poll, then we will execute the GMP and then we'll ratify the poll at the May meeting.
And I want to pause and thank Jim Coulter and Jim Stufflebeam and their colleagues for the hard work that they've done on our behalf. They've built some really great buildings and they've saved us money along the way. And they've got us good, thoughtful information, and they've kept us in touch with our budget and the market and the challenges of building during COVID. So thank you to them both and their colleagues.
Thanks, Brent. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. And if you want to, you may want to hang around for the other parts because I know there's another project coming up. I'm not sure what our next agenda item is. It's like maybe like a
just real
update.
quick. Yeah, construction update. Just real quickly, we saw the pictures Tuesday night, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. But Cody, if we can go to the what did we do? What are we doing? There we go. So what we did last month, Grandview opening, Blue Ridge closed, and Colburn Road punch walk. And then at Woodney, the floor, they started working on the wood floors. In fact, as I mentioned, I was up there on Tuesday and saw the plaster as pretty much all done on the ground floor, and they're moving upstairs on the plaster work. So next slide, please. What we're doing this month is the substantial completion at Colburn Road, which occurred on the 12th, and then Lee Summit Branch was out for bid, as you all know now, and we just recommended the GMP. The Woodneath Homestead, they're working on the trim and the doors. In fact, saw the doors in place, and they're really nice. And installing the fire shutters and refinishing. They hadn't started refinishing the wood floors. They had them all sanded down and look incredible. Best estimate is it's probably the first time. We don't believe that the wood floors that we're refinishing are original. They think that they were probably redone in the 1880s. So this is probably the first time that bare wood has seen the light of day since the 1880s. Was kind of what was our feeling. So next slide. What's coming up in May? Closing of the Lee Summit branch. And why are we closing the Lee Summit branch? Closing the Lee Summit branch because we have to move the collection and we have to move the people into Colburn Road so that we can have our soft opening of the Colburn Road branch on May the 26th. And that was always the plan, that we moved Colburn Road to East Lee Summit. And now we're moving Lee Summit to Colburn Road. And when we're finished with Lee Summit, that's when, when we're finished with Lee Summit, that's when we're going to be hiring new staff, which we approved that concept in the personnel budget, as well as buying new materials to put in that building. So that's why that's happening right now, is even though we just approved Lee Summit, we need all of those resources to reopen Colburn Road right now. And then at Woodneath, painting the walls and the ceilings and installing the carpet where carpet's being installed. So that is the construction status.
Okay, any questions about that? I think the next item of business is a closed session. And if somebody wants to make a motion to go into closed session for purposes of discussing real estate, that would be appropriate.
So moved. This is Joyce.
I second.
there-
This is Michael.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then we're going to need a moment. Just hang in here with us when Cody stops the live YouTube feed, and then we'll